I never imagined that a work assignment could change my life so drastically. As a travel journalist, I've had my fair share of thrilling adventures, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened on that fateful flight to Paris. The day started like any other. I rushed through the crowded airport, my mind focused on the article I needed to write about luxury air travel. I was slightly annoyed at having to dress more formally than usual for the flight, thanks to my editor's insistence that I blend in with the first-class passengers. My sister Lisa, ever the practical one, had reminded me not to miss this opportunity to network with high-profile travelers. As I settled into my plush seat, I couldn't help but notice the impeccably dressed man a few rows ahead. His confident demeanor and the way he interacted with the flight crew suggested he was no ordinary passenger. I soon learned from the whispers around me that he was Captain Jack Turner, the pilot for our flight, currently off duty and flying as a passenger. Curiosity piqued. I tried to focus on my notes, but fate had other plans. Halfway through the flight, there was an announcement that the captain wished to address the passengers. Expecting the usual updates, I was surprised when Jack Turner himself appeared, his voice rich and soothing as he informed us of some unexpected turbulence ahead. As he spoke, our eyes met briefly, and I felt an inexplicable connection. Shaking off the thought as silly, I returned to my work, but my concentration was broken. A short while later, as I was making my way to the restroom, the plane jolted violently. I stumbled, and just as I thought I would fall, a strong hand caught my arm. I looked up to see Jack Turner, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice as steady as his grip. "Yes. Thank you," I stammered, feeling a rush of embarrassment. "I guess I'm not as prepared for turbulence as I thought." He smiled, a gesture that seemed to light up his whole face. "It catches everyone off guard at some point. You might want to hold on to the seat backs as you walk." I thanked him and continued to the restroom, my heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the turbulence. When I returned to my seat, I found a note waiting for me. It was from Jack, inviting me to join him for a drink after the flight landed. My initial reaction was one of hesitation, but curiosity got the better of me. Upon landing in Paris, I found myself in an airport lounge, nervously waiting. Jack arrived, still in his uniform, but his demeanor was far more relaxed. We exchanged pleasantries and soon found ourselves engrossed in conversation. He spoke about his love for flying, the places he had seen, and hinted at a past filled with both triumphs and tragedies. I shared stories of my travels, my passion for writing, and the relentless pursuit of stories that mattered. Hours passed like minutes, and by the time we realized it, the lounge was nearly empty. Jack offered to walk me to my hotel, and despite the late hour, I accepted. As we strolled through the dimly lit streets of Paris, I felt a growing connection, one that both excited and terrified me. This was a man who had seen the world from a different perspective, who carried an air of mystery that I found irresistible. At my hotel, we lingered for a moment, reluctant to part ways. Jack took my hand and looked into my eyes, his expression serious yet warm. "Emily, I know this might seem sudden, but I feel like there's something special here. Can we see where this goes?" I nodded, unable to find the words to express what I was feeling. "I'd like that, Jack." We exchanged numbers, and as he walked away, I felt a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an adventure that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love and destiny. As the days went by, Jack and I kept in touch through texts and late-night calls. Each conversation deepened our connection, and when Jack suggested we spend a weekend together in Paris, I didn't hesitate. My editor had given me the green light to write a piece on romantic getaways, and it seemed like the perfect excuse to see where things could lead with Jack. When I arrived in Paris, Jack was there waiting for me, looking every bit the confident and composed pilot I had first met. Yet there was a softness in his eyes now, a warmth that made my heart skip a beat. He took my hand, and we set off to explore the city together. Our first stop was a charming cafe in Montmartre, where we enjoyed croissants and coffee while the city buzzed around us. Jack seemed more relaxed than ever, and we talked about everything under the sun. He told me about his childhood dream of flying and how he had worked tirelessly to become a pilot. There was a hint of sadness when he spoke about his past, but he quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation back to lighter topics. After breakfast, we wandered through the narrow, cobblestone streets, visiting art galleries and small boutiques. We made our way to the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, where we admired the breathtaking view of the city. Jack took my hand as we looked out over Paris, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. That evening, Jack had planned a surprise. He took me to a little-known restaurant by the Seine, where we had a private table overlooking the river. The meal was exquisite, and the setting was incredibly romantic. As the night wore on, I could feel the barriers between us slowly crumbling. "Emily," Jack began, his voice gentle yet serious, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you." I looked at him, feeling a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "There's a reason I became a pilot," he continued. "I lost someone very close to me in a plane crash several years ago. It was devastating. But I wanted to honor her memory by continuing to do what she loved. She was a flight attendant, and we were planning to get married." His confession took me by surprise, and I felt a pang of empathy for the pain he must have endured. "Jack, I'm so sorry," I said, squeezing his hand. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," he admitted, "but meeting you has made me realize that maybe it's time to move forward. I've been carrying this weight for so long, and I want to find happiness again." His words touched me deeply, and I felt a renewed sense of hope for what we could have together. "I'm here for you, Jack," I said softly. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The rest of the weekend was a blur of laughter, romance, and shared moments. We visited the Louvre, strolled along the Champs-Élysées, and even took a moonlit boat ride on the Seine. Each experience brought us closer, and by the time I had to leave, I knew I was falling for him. As we stood at the airport saying our goodbyes, Jack pulled me into his arms and kissed me deeply. "I don't want this to end," he whispered. "Neither do I replied, my heart aching at the thought of leaving him. "We'll make this work, Jack. I believe in us." With one last lingering kiss, I boarded my flight back to New York, already counting down the days until I could see him again. Little did I know, our journey was about to take a dramatic turn, testing our newfound love in ways I could never have imagined. Back in New York, I threw myself into work, but Jack was never far from my thoughts. Our calls and messages became the highlight of my day, each conversation bringing us closer despite the miles between us. I was on cloud nine, believing that nothing could come between us. Then one evening, as I was wrapping up an article at my favorite coffee shop, my sister Lisa called. There was an urgency in her voice that made my heart race. "Emily, have you seen this?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Seen what?" I replied, confused. "Check your email. I just forwarded you something." Curiosity piqued, I opened my laptop and clicked on the email. My heart sank as I read the headline of the attached article. "High-flying romance, Captain Jack Turner engaged to flight attendant Sophie Miller." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The article was accompanied by photos of Jack and Sophie looking very much in love. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could Jack have hidden something so significant from me? I needed answers. I called Jack, my hands trembling as I waited for him to pick up. When he finally did, his voice was filled with surprise and concern. "Emily, what's wrong?" "Jack, are you engaged to Sophie Miller?" I blurted out, unable to keep the anger and hurt from my voice. There was a long silence on the other end before he finally spoke. "Emily, I can explain." "Explain? There's nothing to explain, Jack. You lied to me." "No, I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything," he said, his voice strained. "Please, let me explain in person." Despite my anger, I agreed to meet him. We arranged to meet at a quiet bar near my apartment. When I walked in, Jack was already there, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. He stood up as I approached, but I remained standing, crossing my arms defensively. "Emily, please, sit down," he pleaded. Reluctantly, I sat across from him, waiting for him to speak. "Sophie and I were engaged," he began, his eyes searching mine. "But it's not what you think. It was an arrangement more than anything else, something our families pushed us into. We were never truly in love." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Because I was trying to end it," he said. "I didn't want to burden you with my complicated past. Sophie and I agreed to go our separate ways, but our families have been pressuring us to stay together." "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I was afraid of losing you," he admitted. "I didn't want to scare you away with my messy life, but now I see that was a mistake. I'm so sorry, Emily." His sincerity was palpable, but I still felt betrayed. "I need time to think," I said finally, standing up to leave. "Please, Emily," he said, reaching out to touch my hand. "Don't give up on us." I pulled my hand away, tears stinging my eyes. "I don't know if I can trust you, Jack." With that, I walked out of the bar, feeling more lost and confused than ever. Back at my apartment, I collapsed onto my bed, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to forgive him, but another part of me wondered if I could ever trust him again. Days turned into weeks, and though Jack continued to reach out, I kept my distance. I focused on my work, trying to push him out of my mind. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Tom Harding, Jack's co-pilot and best friend. He wanted to meet and talk about Jack. Hesitant but curious, I agreed. When we met, Tom looked genuinely concerned. "Emily, I know Jack messed up, but there's something you need to know. He's been through a lot. The engagement with Sophie was a way to cope with his past. He never expected to meet someone like you." He went on to explain how Jack had lost his first love in a plane crash, which had left him deeply scarred. The engagement with Sophie was more about pleasing their families than a real relationship. "Jack is trying to move on, but it's not easy for him," Tom said. "He really cares about you, Emily. Give him another chance." Tom's words gave me a lot to think about. Maybe Jack deserved a second chance, but I needed to hear it from him. I decided to confront him one last time to see if we could find a way through this together. Determined to get to the bottom of everything, I agreed to meet Jack one last time. We arranged to meet at a quiet park in the city, a place where we could talk without interruptions. As I approached, I saw Jack sitting on a bench, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. He stood up when he saw me, his eyes filled with hope and anxiety. "Emily," he began, his voice soft, "thank you for meeting me." I sat down beside him, keeping a slight distance. "I need to understand, Jack. No more secrets. I need to know everything." Jack took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "Emily, I want to tell you everything. After losing my first love, I was shattered. I didn't know how to move on. When Sophie and I got engaged, it was a way to cope with the pressure from our families and my unresolved grief. But it was never about love, not like what I feel for you." I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you let me find out like this?" "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of losing you, afraid of facing my past. But meeting you made me realize I can't keep running from it. I ended things with Sophie. I want to be with you, Emily, but I understand if you can't trust me." His words were sincere, and I could see the pain in his eyes. I took a moment to process everything before speaking. "Jack, I want to believe you, but trust is earned. We need to start fresh, with complete honesty." Jack nodded, relief washing over his face. "I promise, no more secrets. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." We decided to take things slow, rebuilding our relationship step by step. It wasn't easy, but I could see Jack was committed to making it work. He introduced me to his family, explaining the truth about his past and his relationship with Sophie. They were supportive, understanding the struggle Jack had been through. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my work, finding solace in writing and traveling. Jack and I continued to meet regularly, sharing our lives and our hopes for the future. Slowly but surely, the walls between us began to crumble. One day, Jack invited me to a small gathering with his colleagues, including Tom and Sophie. I was nervous about seeing Sophie, but she surprised me by approaching with a genuine smile. "Emily, I owe you an apology," she said. "Jack and I were never in love, and I should have ended things sooner. I'm glad he found someone who truly makes him happy." Her words eased the tension, and we spent the evening talking and laughing, the atmosphere light and friendly. As the night wore on, Jack took my hand and led me outside to the terrace, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I know it hasn't been easy, but I'm grateful you gave me a second chance. I love you, and I want to spend my life with you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at him. "I love you too, Jack. Let's move forward together." Our relationship grew stronger with each passing day. We traveled together, explored new places, and built memories that would last a lifetime. But just as everything seemed perfect, life threw us another curveball. Just as I was about to leave for an assignment in Tokyo, I received an urgent message from Jack. He asked me to meet him at the airport, saying it was important. My heart raced with anticipation and worry as I rushed to the airport. When I arrived, Jack was waiting for me, a serious expression on his face. "Emily, I need to tell you something," he began, but before he could continue, an emergency announcement blared through the airport. One of the flights was experiencing severe technical issues, and the captain had been injured. They needed an experienced pilot to take over. Without hesitation, Jack volunteered. "I'll take the flight," he said, turning to me. "I need you to come with me, Emily. Please." My mind raced, but I knew I couldn't let him face this alone. I nodded, and we boarded the plane together. The tension was palpable as we took our seats, Jack taking command of the situation with his usual calm and confidence. As the plane soared into the stormy skies, the turbulence was fierce. Jack's voice over the intercom was steady, reassuring the passengers. But then the plane lurched violently, and for a moment, fear gripped me. Jack's voice came through again, but this time it was different. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I have someone very special on board with me today. Emily, you've been my anchor through turbulent times. I love you more than words can express. Will you marry me?" I was stunned, the fear momentarily forgotten. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the depth of Jack's love and commitment. I grabbed the intercom and with a voice filled with emotion replied, "Yes, Jack, I will marry you." The plane erupted in applause, and despite the storm raging outside, I felt a profound sense of peace and happiness. Jack's exceptional skills as a pilot guided us safely through the storm, and we landed without incident. As we disembarked, Jack took me into his arms and kissed me deeply, the cheers of the passengers ringing in our ears. Sophie, who had been on the flight as part of the crew, approached us with a smile. "Congratulations, you two. You deserve all the happiness in the world." In the days that followed, Jack and I began planning our future together. We balanced our demanding careers with our blossoming relationship, finding strength and joy in each other's company. Lisa and Tom, who had been quietly supporting us all along, developed a budding romance of their own, adding a lighthearted twist to our story. Emily and Jack stood on the terrace of their new home, the sun setting in the distance. They had weathered the storms of life together, their love growing stronger with each passing day. Lisa and Tom, hand in hand, joined them, their laughter filling the air. As they looked out over the city, Emily felt a deep sense of contentment. She had found love in the most unexpected place, and despite the twists and turns, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Here's to new beginnings," Jack said, raising his glass. "To love and adventure," Emily added, her heart full of gratitude and joy. Together, they toasted to the future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their love soaring higher than ever before.